Hey everyone, Gary Simon of Corsetro. So today we're going to continue on with the theme that I've been keeping up in the channel the last week or so with UI design and prototyping tools overviews. All right, so just last week we did Gravity Designer and also Lunacy. And today we're going to take a look at Figma. And I have to say, Figma is the one tool that I think most of you have requested more than any other tool. So that's for good reason. It's 100% free for an individual, and also it's 100% web-based. It also has prototyping in it, and it also has a desktop version that you can use in multiple operating system, which is made possible through Electron. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you guys through a quick kind of like a mobile UI design just to show as many features as possible, like in a 30-minute video, so you can get a well-rounded understanding of how this tool operates. And I have to say, it's very similar to Adobe XD, except it's free and even web-based. So that's pretty freaking awesome. All right, so make sure you subscribe here if you haven't yet. Make sure you do that because I'm pumping out videos like a crack addict. And also check out corsetro.com. All right, so here we are at figma.com, and just real quickly, just to go through this landing page, it's just going to give you some basic overview, blah, 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 about the features, but we're going to get into that ourselves. The main thing I wanted to look at real quick was just the pricing area. And this is one of the most impressive things about this, because basically, if you are an individual, it's free. I had to do a search for that, even though it was up top. I knew it was somewhere. But yes, if you're working with a team, then this is the right plan for you. I would definitely make this bigger if I was the Figma team, because I glossed right over that. It's kind of important. So yeah, if you're a freelancer like most people are, which I don't have any claim to back that up, but if you're a freelancer, it's free and it's 100% awesome. And then if you're working with a team of some sort, you know, you can, if you have up to 3 projects, you're fine. It's free. It's only $12 a month if you want a bunch of stuff. So basically, you want to sign up rather. And I already did that to make it easy with a Google sign-in. And once you're there, and you probably have to confirm your account unless, of course, you're using Google. I just accidentally created that. There we go. This is a completely web-based interface, and also, just as in the previous tutorial where I covered Gravity Designer, they also have a desktop version, and of course that's made possible with Electron. If you don't know what that is, do a search on my channel for that, but basically it allows you to create native desktop apps for multiple operating systems using web technologies. So basically you can kind of just, in a sense, clone their existing code base here that works in the browser, but also make it work for native desktops and add, you know, special additional functionality. But I'm just going to need to use this the desktop version here, and you can see I am in the browser. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So the first thing to get started is just this new file icon up there. And as we could see, if you've been paying attention to any of my channel at all lately, I've been covering prototyping tools, and it has a similar interface, you know, where we have our canvas in the middle, properties on the right, we have some tools up here, and then we have a layer section down here, and also a couple other things that we'll take a look at in a little bit. But first, how do we actually start with a project or a canvas of some sort, or an artboard? Well, we do that right here. We click on this tool, and then it shows us this stuff on the right. Now, I would change that because I was kind of confused when I first used this, and mind you, I've only used this once, so it made it confusing. You know, okay, I had to click there to figure out where to start. This should be selected by default. That way you have your templates here to get started. So I'm just going to choose iPhone X. And notice we have our 3 tabs right here: Design, Prototype, because yes, this is a prototyping tool as well, unlike a few of the others that we've covered. And then also Code, which will provide you with CSS code depending on which elements you're selecting. So here is our our artboard. And again, just to talk about, which I've done in the previous tutorials, how do we move around in here? So spacebar, very simple and standard. You can zoom up holding the control key, which is kind of different. I'm used to holding the alt key, but the alt key, if I press that, allows you to go up and down. So just, minute differences, nothing big. So once we have this selected, again, if you select anything, including the artboard, you're going to have all the options show up here. Like if you want to change the background color, here we go in the backgrounds section. I'm going to leave it white, but just to look at this, which is pretty much a universal color picker for any element, we have our ability to select any type or shade of colors and the lightness and darkness down here. We can have it output hex. It's hex by default, or RGB, CSS, HSB. We can change the opacity, and there's also a slider right here for that. And then we have a swatch section down here, and we can add new by clicking that. Okay, so let's go ahead and start designing a mobile app, or just a mobile version of a web app. And I'm not going to get too in depth. I really just, the purpose is just to learn this application. So let's start off with a rectangle. And I'm just going to, maybe this would be like the splash screen or the very first screen. Let's drag this up. All right, so it does have guides exactly as you would want. So if I get this there, it snaps nice into place. All right, let's make it a primary color, something like around a blue. Maybe we'll turn it up just a slight notch. There we go. So now with this selected, we can add this as a custom color down here. Would have been nice if they added it up there. What is personal colors, document colors? Okay, that's better. There we go. Switch to document. All right, so let's say for instance we wanted to change the actual physical shape of this rectangle beyond just scaling it up and down, left and right. So double clicking it will get us into a mode from which we can now access the anchor points. So if I just take this one, hold shift, go down, look at that, cool. What if we wanted to add an anchor point? Can it do that? So let's see here. Sweet. And notice it's snapping right here in the middle, just as we would want it to. So if I left click, did it add it? Well, let's see. So if I hit escape and hit V, which is kind of the universal shortcut for a move tool in most applications, there we go. It is a part of our shape now. Awesome. So what about the bend tool? There we go. So now we can create a nice sort of Bezier curve. All right, so let's see if we can take multiple anchor points and move them down. Select V to go back to the move tool. Whoa, I just created the Nike swoosh almost. All right, let's bring this back up. Let's play around with this some more. All right, this is quite intuitive, I have to say. So I select this, we can get back to just the regular select mode. Let me double click this and take all these three and drop them down, drag them down rather. Okay, that wasn't snapping though this time, so maybe I'll just use my keyboard arrow keys. Okay, so to get out of the mode where you're in the anchor points, you just double click outside. Notice I still didn't get that lined up correctly. So all this is just helping me to kind of get acquainted with this, with the move tools and such. Looks like this one got moved on its own. There we go. All right, great. So how about duplicating? Let's see, what would it take to do that? Select it, Control D, duplicate selection. Very easy, as you would expect, but you have to do it because sometimes with these apps, certain no-brainer things are left out. So I've just duplicated and moved up with my keyboard arrow key. Just now, I did see a comment that somebody said there's no skewing tools up here. So edit object, of course, gets us into that object mode. The bend tool, I don't think will probably help us here. The pen tool has just have a pencil tool. Yeah, so I don't believe right now there is any type of skewing, but that's okay. Let's take these down. I don't know, I'm just experimenting here. I'm not sure if I necessarily like that. Maybe I'll bring this one and hide it. All right. So let's let's duplicate this. Let's rotate it, see how that works. All right, as you would expect, hold Shift. All right, so now we have this big thing hanging up here. Now that's because it's not really considered a part of this artboard. So, because most of it's hanging outside of it. If we drag this in here, all right, so I know one way that we can tackle this, or we can fix this. We can just take the rectangle tool, make it match the very top of the canvas, select both, and this is where we can use this section, which is equivalent to like Adobe Illustrator's Pathfinder, where we can do different things with multiple selections here. So we can subtract the selection. Voila, now we have that part up top. Awesome. So of course we have opacity down here. You can use once you have any of these these text fields with these numeric values, you can use your keyboard up and down arrow keys. I don't like this though, but again, I wanted to demonstrate this tool right here. This is really important if you're working with shapes and you're creating vectors here. So let's see about, can this import SVG files that you're using? So let's say, for instance, we want to use some material IO icons. So material IO icons, let's type in traffic light. Okay, so we click this. We'll choose, let's just make it we'll leave it black. And then we'll choose SVG to download it. All right, so we're going to show this in the folder. This showed up off my screen. But what I'm going to do is just drag it onto my desktop. All right, so if I move this, and I show this right here, and then we go back to our app. There we go. Can we drag this in? Yes, we can. That's awesome. Just like you can in Adobe XD. And I presume other apps. I didn't try that with Gravit Designer. I'm not sure. But now we can notice that this inherently is a group, because we can see this little drop, or this little arrow. If we click it, we'll see that we have our vectors here already. That's how material IO icons are, though. They give you a background, like a container in each one. But so let's say, for instance, you wanted to change this color to the blue that we've been using. When you select it, it's just going to select a group, and it has the background as white. That's not what you want to do. You can actually get to the inner layers here by double-clicking onto it. And now we can choose our primary color. Awesome. All right, so let's get that centered up. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. Shift and Alt will allow you to scale up. So so far my impressions are very positive of this app. I mean, it's behaving exactly as I would hope it would behave. So let's just type in my app. Now, this is using the Montserrat font that I've always been using. This is they allows you to use, I think this is part of Google Web Fonts. So you have a ton of awesome fonts that you can use already. They're already ready to go. So the type tool, of course, you have all your justifications here. You have your line height, you have your letter spacing, paragraph spacing, and indentation. Let's see here. For our fill, let's go ahead and just use... Yeah, it's a completely blue-ass app right here. So this is looking pretty good so far. Let's increase the size. Keyboard up arrow key, perfect. My app. Let's make a button. So how would a button work? Oh, by the way, let's get that out there. So we have the rectangle tool. Let's just go from the very left to the very right, even though I don't want it to. And the reason I'm doing that is because it will allow me to very easily hold the Alt key while left clicking and dragging in. And that way it's completely centered up for me. All right, so does this have the little corner border radiuses? All right, well, let's zoom up. So Control mouse wheel, and there we go. We could see it right there when you get a little bit closer. So it gives us our ability to change the radiuses very easily. All right, so let's change this ugly gray color to, we'll make this white. Something that really contrasts well. Let's get our button call to action text out here. So I'm just left clicking and dragging to create a text area. So let's see, we'll just call this let's get going. Some type of unique call to action text. Let's get this now. And again, we're going to use our swatches here. Let's get this centered up. There we go. Nice. What about drop shadows? All right, so let's have a drop shadow on here. And again, drop shadows are one of those things that you could really screw up. So only use them if you know what you're doing. You might kill kittens. So effects, this is where you're going to access your drop downs along with inner shadows, layer blurs, and background blur. There we go. Drop shadow. If you want to change the options, let's zoom up a little bit. Let's get rid of this thing down there. So change options. We have the blur amount, so we can change this to 0. X is 0 and Y is 4. I kind of like that. And let's just take down the opacity a little bit, like 9%. And there we go. We got a fantastic drop shadow. Let's create a secondary. Actually, this isn't evened up entirely. There we go. All right, now let's take both of these. Now, it would make sense to make this a group, right? Because we have 2 different layers, but if you move the button, you want the text to move too. So Control G gets you into a group. You can double click, rename it My Button. So again, everything's working as you would expect it to. So Control D, who has duplicated it, just drop it down. And let's maybe this button down here isn't as important. So using visual hierarchy through design here, we can double click on this to select this. Let's get rid of the fill. All right, so hide that, and then we'll add a stroke. Now, one thing that's kind of frustrating is because it's selected, the actual selection indicator box is kind of hiding this 1 pixel stroke that's over here. So not a big deal. Just make this white. And then we'll make our text white. We can't see it, but I know it's there. And that way it's selected right there. We'll make this over here white as well. And then we'll just say, do something else. Hit escape. Sweet. And again, if you really want to make this not that important, another way is to decrease the font weight. So we can go to regular. Awesome. Okay, so we'll say that's done. All right. What we'll do now is let's create another artboard. So let's, because prototyping is a thing here, we want to make something, a page that will show up when somebody clicks on Let's Get Going or to enter the actual app. So we'll take and select this artboard, hit Control D. Voila, perfect as you would expect. And so now let's create just a real quick app interface. I'm not going to do much, trust me. So let's take this, scale this down quite a bit. That's about 43 by 43. My app. We'll take this and scale down the size quite a bit. Like Graphic Designer, it doesn't allow you to left click and drag. That would be cool if they allowed that. Technically, I'm not sure how difficult that would be to integrate though. All right. So now let's add a hamburger icon menu thing over here. So let's bring up our material IO real quickly. We'll do the same thing. So we'll just say menu. The typical menu right here. We'll choose, just black again, and then we'll change the color after. So we'll download that. I'm going to drag that off screen onto my desktop here. All right, and then we'll go back to Figma, drag it in. There it is. Awesome. Get this back out. And once again, we'll just open this up. We actually have our vector here. We'll choose our blue. And we'll change the size. We could either hold shift and change the size that way, or we can change the size up here. We could choose this to constrain the proportions. Let's try 32. Awesome. And you can fine tune it, of course, with your keyboard arrow keys. Okay. So now let's, I'm going to get rid of all this. Let's just, I'm going to get rid of this bottom button. We're going to keep this button, but I'm going to put it off to the side. So now let's just create kind of a container right here. And let's make this kind of like a light, very light gray, ED, ED, ED. Move this over here to the center. All right, I think that's the center. And let's try see how this app works with images or photographs. So we'll have like a photographs kind of container down here. So let's go to images Google. All right, so let's just type in traffic. All right, usage rights, label for use with modification. Let's drag this onto the desktop. Copy and replace. We'll go back to Figma. Now let's just drag this sucker right onto our artboard. Okay, so made it quite large. Let's zoom out, holding Control. All right, so scale it down, zoom back up. Now notice once it knows it's inside of this artboard, it's not going to display whatever's outside of it, which is handy, of course. So let's play with the layer blend modes. So this is really handy as well. So let's create a selection over the entire area. We can also reorder these. We can just left click and drag it underneath, or you can right click it and either bring forward to front, backward to back. So send backward will make it go just one layer beneath it. And then now let's take this, and over here we have this pass through. All right, so now we can change blend modes and stuff like that, so we can darken it. Oh, by the way, let's get this out. Let's get this. This is that ugly gray color. Let's just make it that blue. Right click, send backward. There we go. So now you can just play with your blend modes if you want. This is too much contrast. We want it kind of like a watermark background, so we can do something like 20% here. That looks good. All right, cool. So I'm not going to really develop this interface anymore because I just want to get to the point where we can show the prototyping ability. I'm going to make one more quick adjustment, and we'll say, okay, what happens when the user clicks on this menu? Let's show a menu. All right, so Control D will duplicate it. The experience of using this app so far has been pretty fantastic, I have to say. Okay, so let's take everything right here. We're going to Control G to group it. All right, so now we have a group, and we also have, let's go down to our effects, and let's add an effect of layer blur. This will allow us to kind of simulate a blur And that way it kind of shifts focus or emphasis onto the menu that's going to show up on the right-hand side. So it allows you to simply change the blur amount, which is pretty cool. One thing that would happen naturally is we could see the edges. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit and hold Alt and scale that out just a tad bit. All right, so now let's create a container on top. So just going from very left or the very right to about a third of the way. One thing I do wish it would do is remember the last fill color. That would be kind of handy. All right, so yeah, we'll just leave it that color. We'll do the material icons one more quick time. We'll just do, where is it? Is there one for close? Yes, there is. Close. Download the SVG. Could have made this white because that's what I'm going to use. All right, and we'll go back. Bring this over here. Extend this. All right. We're also going to make this 32 just to keep consistent. And then double click this, change the fill to white. All right, and then real quickly we'll create the a repeating menu right here. So this is where I'm going to introduce you in a second to components, which is a real important topic here for Figma. So one thing, I could just create a selection like this. Sometimes you'll find yourself, it might be easier. In this case, it probably wasn't easier, but you can just duplicate this layer, hold Alt, and that way you know it's 100% lined up in terms of the from left to right being inside of this container. So let's just make this maybe slightly darker. Okay. And let's also, maybe we want to create a more of a distinction or separation between this background and this section over here. So we can duplicate this, Control D, move this over, and get it a little bit closer like that. Make this one even darker, maybe right around there. And then now we're going to have multiple. This is kind of just an item or a link container. So we're going to have multiple of these. And in this type of situation, you may find yourself wanting to maybe make an adjustment, and it would be a pain to have to make the adjustment for 5 different links, correct? Yeah, most certainly. So we'll take both of these layers, hold Shift and select them. You can see they're both selected. And then we can right click and then choose Create Component, or you can click up here. I believe that's the component right here. Yep. And now it's highlighted in purple to let you know that it is a component. All right. So let me I'll show you exactly how this this ends up working. You know what? Before I'm going to back up and not do that. When I was originally testing for this, I didn't include the text area in the component itself. Let's see if that actually works the way I would want it to work. So I'm going to type in About Us. And that's pretty big. You know what? Although for usability purposes, maybe it's a good idea to keep it that big. There we go. Yeah. My gut reaction is to make it smaller, but I think this works well here. So let's take all 3 of those and then create a component and see how that works. So we've created the component. Now let's duplicate this. All right, so we just created a little bit of separation between them. And then let's duplicate it. Let's take both of these, Control V, Control C, Control V, or you could have Control D it, same thing. And we'll do one more. Okay. So now what happens if, for instance, you say, okay, well, I want this to come over a little bit more to the right. So now if I do that, make sure I click on this. There we go. If I make it a change to this, it's going to affect all the rest. And that is what components are. That's what they allow you to do. They cut out a lot of work if you have elements that are repeated. Now, what if I make a change to this text area or this text field? Yeah, it will make a change to all the rest of them, which is something that we don't want. So what we could do, or what I hope we can do, is right click and then we'll choose detach. Okay, detach instance would probably now make them not a part of this component. But now we can change these about us, maybe services or something. And there we go. All right, so in this case, you wouldn't want to create a component out of, that includes the text if you wanted unique text. All right, so I think that's pretty good. We'll stop there for the design portion. Now let's check out prototyping. So if we switch to the prototyping tab, we see not much changes, but what we'll do, I wish I could, can I close this off, or I'm wondering if I can just collapse this. No, I don't think I can. Oh well. Well, anyhow. And normally this isn't a big deal if you have a big enough resolution. Right now I'm only on 1920 by 1080 for this video. Normally I'm on 4K and this wouldn't be so cluttered. But anyhow, what we can do now is select like this button, and we can see this time it has a little circular icon, this little dragger. Well, over here we have our destination. Well, we can specify the destination very similar just as in XD or experience design by just dragging it over. And it allows you to change the transition so the behavior is instant by default if you just wanted to automatically go there without any type of animation. Or we can dissolve it, move it, push it. Try push, and it gives you a preview where you can then change the duration of the animation or the transition between the page, the direction as well, and then also easing. So it's pretty powerful. Pretty much everything that you would want for page transition animations. So now, once they're here, let's make this go back. Oops. Okay, so now it's going back. We'll make this push as well, except go this way. All right, and then the hamburger menu, we'll make it go to this nav page. We should probably double click these and change the titles appropriately. You would want to do that if you were working on a serious project. And then we'll make the X go back to this page. All right, so now we have all of our connections that are visible, and they're visible by default, unlike in Adobe XD, which is, okay. I think that's pretty much all that I would want to do. I would probably want to make, I wonder if you can make, let's see here. Just take this whole thing. If they click outside of here, they can also get back. There we go. All right. That's looking pretty good to me. So let's give it a go. All right. So we'll click the present button. It automatically launches a new browser tab, by the way. And let's choose let's get going. There we go. We can go back, of course. Choose our menu there. And get out of there. And there we go. Very simple, obviously. But let's see, what else do we have here? We have some other options. Let's see, we have our current username. We can share the prototype. This show hotspot. So basically this means if I click here, it's going to show us where we can actually click, which is very handy. That's a common feature. We can also choose how to fill this presentation here. And we can also view it full screen. Of course, my screen extends way beyond this viewable area. And that's pretty much it for the presentation section. Now, mind you, there's a lot of other stuff here that I didn't really touch on, but for the most part, we went through, creating a basic app, covered all the necessary elements. Like also, I will show comments. You can specifically place comments in certain areas. So let's say, for instance, I designed this logo. I may say, my caps lock is always on. I don't know about this. what do you say? All right, post. All right, so now it has a little resolve button, like this is an issue, I want feedback, and then the person can give feedback when you share the prototype in the same location. So now if I go back to here, you don't see a comment, but if we go back to this show comments, it'll show you wherever you're at, and you can place multiple comments. Very, very good stuff. So this is quite a really robust option, especially for it being free. We also have settings over here, pixel preview. This is enabled. I would imagine if you're, there we go. It's going to show the actual pixels. That looks terrible though, so let's go ahead and, where were those settings at? There we go. Turn that off. All right, and then you can also export, oh, by the way, code. We have our CSS, so like for instance, if we want the CSS for this button, and this is the group though, so let's click on this. If we want it just for the container, and we want the code, well, there we go. And that is quite handy, and you don't have to use everything. Maybe you'd have some other way of creating this container here, but you want the aesthetics, like the color and stuff. Just copy that. There you go. And you can paste it into your code editor. Make sure you check out my site, coursetro.com, where you're going to find a bunch of courses on modern design and development. A lot are free, and the others you can access for the cost of buying me like a 6-pack each month. That's it. Now also, it probably wouldn't hurt to subscribe here on YouTube, and be sure to make sure the notifications are turned on.